So Ricardo, if you want to say a couple of words
Yeah.
about the
Look,
this thing here.
Yeah,
and why
thank
we're-
you,
Yeah.
thank you all. So I'm really excited to be here. You know, it's such a pleasure to have the chance to come to Riyadh 3 times in 1 year, right? So it's really wonderful, and people are very welcoming to me. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here, and also to be with Al Zeitoun. We are great friends, and this is something that project management brings to you as a side effect of working in this area. So we work it, but I want just to touch on what you said about projects fail even before they start. I remember 2007, we both were at the board at that time, and we were discussing what is a project. And then, because I am the one from the school, I did my PMP in 1998. So this was a long time. And for me, success of projects, it's you deliver on time, you deliver on budget, you did what was supposed to be done, success. If people will use it later, it was not your problem. Means you just deliver what was supposed to be delivered. However, over time, things just start changing. Why? Because, you know, it becomes irrelevant to deliver on time, something people don't use, people don't care. There is no benefit. And you remember we were together. In 2007, we started the discussion on that became the strategy of PMI at that time that changed everything, is that the word project has 2 meanings. This is specific project, that the tactical operational deliver, but also the whole discipline that connect ideas to reality, delivering the benefit. So if you have a bad idea, it's a cause and a root cause also for success, for failure and success.
Both.
And this was, I would say, something like a seed of what we want to share with you today. So first, we need to be cautious when we exercise an evaluation about the future. Because we only know when the future becomes present, right? Because we are talking, oh, this is a trend, this will happen, this may happen. But things change. We can see this, and I will talk a lot about that with AI recently, and things are evolving at a different pace. So what we did, together with Dr. Harold Kaiser, Al Zeitoun was invited to collaborate. And then he invited me to join them on this effort. And what we did, we said, look, let's try to take examples of companies, of what they are doing, how they are seeing the future of project management, how do they see the excellence. And this is what culminates in this book that we are introducing. By the way, I believe, if I'm not wrong, please, probably tomorrow afternoon, there will be a signing opportunity at the booths area there, okay? So I don't know how it will be organized, okay? But just for you to keep in mind, so probably tomorrow.
And whether you have access to the book or not, we're not selling a
book. Yeah, we don't know. We are not selling it. Okay, I know that there are books here, but we don't.
Actually, if you really are keen on getting a copy of the book and buying it, please make sure. I remember at some point to mention there's a code for this event to give at least 20% discount or whatever it is. So I'll let you know.
Yeah.
In all avenues, you know, Amazon, and Wiley.
But tomorrow there will be some books here, but I don't know.
Yeah. So, but
it's
anyhow,
not.
No, that's fine. But the book is about really key points and pillars. You will see here in a minute to Ricardo's point, and Ricardo hit a very important point. The book was a learning experience for us. So we really. He and I have authored, he's authored a lot of books prior to that one. I've only authored elements of books and papers and so forth. So this is my first quote-unquote official book with 2 partners, and I have one coming up hopefully by the end of this year on program management. But the reason I like this one a lot, it's a learning experience for me personally, and Ricardo would vouch to that as well. Kerzner is a big authority. How much he learned from the different experiences of those companies, I cannot tell. But you can tell, as you'll see, that there are 3 components across all companies. strategy, people, and culture. And of course, digitization. But the strategy, if it's not right, the people are not the right alignment, the right skills, the right motivation. What kills people, as we know very well, and we've experienced that in COVID and everything else, is that we can be disconnected. We can truly miss the link of what matters. And if we are not passionate about what we do, end of the game, right? And passion is about impact. Just like Ricardo and I both already shared. So what, you work on a project and do such a great job if it's not impacting the intended audience and users and so forth, right? So this is no doubt the people is very important. And then, of course, the culture. Tomorrow there's a panel on culture. And is success of transformation culture or digital, right? We have to be very careful. Ricardo is going to give you a lot of insights about AI and some other things as we go through the session. And he said we cannot read the future, which I love that. And we also, in our culture, we know Allah alam. Yani at the end of the day, we don't know how things are going to really fall in place. But do we have an input in shaping that? The answer is yes. And that's why we have things like risk management. That's why we did a lot of things in project management over the years. So we have 10 pillars that really enlightened this work. And we'll talk only about 5 today, right? So Ricardo's going to address the humanitarian. He's going to share with you really great experiences he's had personally also in working in that field. I'm going to talk through culture. I love culture. If I had to finish my career just doing culture stuff, I'm all for it, yeah? And I work in Siemens right now, and even Siemens, big name, billions and billions of dollars and they still need culture changes on a daily basis. Yeah? I'm in a team right now in Siemens that is supposed to create a startup culture for a Titanic. Siemens is a Titanic, right? So take that back to a startup kind of a culture, especially when it comes to innovation. It's almost impossible. But you have to try. There's no such thing as impossible. Yeah? And then Ricardo will get into digitization. Of course, the skills are changing, right? You will see as we go through this that the project manager title in the future does not matter. Does not. Whether it stays project manager, whether PMI stays as PMI, everything should be on the table, right? Because it's really about creating the right impact and creating those changes we want to see in the future. Then I'm going to address the way of working, which we've all experienced what has been changing in it. So look into the future there as well a little bit. And then the last one, both of us will address, will be, we're not going to get into PMO's dynamics so much, right? We're going to see more sessions there. Laura is great. I think she's tomorrow, right? Laura is also, what's Laura's last name? What's her last? I believe so, yeah. She's going to be talking also about PMOs. And by the way, keep an eye on that session and keep an eye on something very important Laura says about that, and that matches where the future is going. Don't be an order taker. Be an impact driver. This is the statement she's going to use. One more time. Don't be an order taker. Be an impact driver. This is easier said than done. That hits many of these points. Hits the changing in skills, the kind of leadership. You've been hearing all about servant leadership and social leadership and all those things. They're all true. But they require that you change your mindset completely. And then finally, we have a point about growth and metrics. So these are the 10. Yeah, go ahead.
I want just to say one thing. We did this and we split into 10 just to make it easier for us to understand. Let's not try to box everything because reality permeates everything. Evolving skills supports you to develop an innovative culture that change the way you do work. So we will explain into these boxes just to make it easier for us to transmit the ideas to you. But in real life, everything permeates everything all the time. And we try to put the examples in the right chapter, in the right context. Yeah. But some of the interviews, we had a hard time to say, it fits here, there. Because, you know, when you do one thing, for example, when you talk about digitization, you are already changing culture. The way of working.
100%. Great point. And you're right about that difficulty. And it's a first edition, right? So I'm sure in the second edition, the companies will shuffle. Other companies will contribute. We had like 50, 60 companies, almost 35 of which were on the cover, but there is a lot of companies contributing to that. So first thing, I promise you we're going to exercise and move around. So first thing I want you to do, please, to stand up and just look at the person next to you. Hopefully you like him or her, right? You're okay with talking to that person. You don't need to talk about family or personal relationships or anything like that. Just address this question right here. Do you have examples? Look at the 10 pillars And just, you have only 2.5 minutes. Do you have examples in your organizations where these pillars are dominant nowadays, right? What are you seeing in your own place of work, your
Just
ecosystem?
stand up quickly, talk, and sit.
Yep.
2 minutes. It's just example. It can be 2 or 3 people, okay? Just, yeah.
So the
Oh, good.
one thing I don't know is how to manage the time. I didn't time it very well. We have 75 minutes.
Yeah. What time is it now?
It's only 14 minutes into it, right? So give ourselves another 60. We have an hour. Mm-hmm. Basically have an hour. Okay.
Okay.
So we can time it to an hour, and let's split the hour into 5 chunks. So 20. If we find ourselves going 18 minutes or plus in any section, let's.
My friend,
Okay.
you just interrupt me and we move. Don't worry. Time is over. Let's sit. So what do of course if we allow you to talk for half an hour, you will have plenty of examples. And this is a great thing, but this was just a refresher for you to see how these things are happening now. You know, sometimes, and when I show the next slide, probably you say, oh God, there is another example here. Oh, you know, and you will remember, because these are something that is happening all the time in our organizations today.
Let's get 1 or 2 comments. Any big comments on this? Who really was so passionate about one of these, and why?
Innovation culture.
Innovation culture. Okay.
Because, you know, sometimes people, they do hear about innovation, they want to innovate, but
Yeah.
people sometimes they resist it.
Yeah.
Because they are afraid maybe if they automate,
Yeah.
they will lose their jobs. You know?
Yeah.
So they hesitate on jumping on the boat of innovation, and this is a challenge for organizations.
I find it very interesting because Dr. Saadi finished actually with a slide that defines innovation, right? When we think innovation, we think complete R&D, new product development, getting the latest technology that has never been utilized before, but it's really innovating, crosses. Ricardo nailed it when he said things cross across these things, right? So innovation, a small change in the way of working, in the workflow, any of the above is what? Innovation. So it's really about change.
Yeah.
And we're in 2023. If we still believe we can resist change and or operate in a way, in the language of projects, like a waterfall or gates and pure even in construction. WSP is a great example of a company I work with in their Australian team. Even in construction, they're applying Agile. Even in the scope of work, they're applying Agile. There are ways to control that, right? So we need to really, innovate everything we do if it gets us to that outcome we discussed earlier. Now, Ricardo mentioned in Saudi 3 times this year.
Yeah.
This is my first time this year. So I brought an example, maybe not from Saudi, because this is the guy I interacted with last. You know this guy, right? Al-Abbar. And the reason I start with that example, because he's hit the nail on the head in terms of many of the pillars we have. Yeah, I operated with him on a panel. He combines the focus on digitization. He now has, away from the real estate, has all these apps and finance capabilities that he has through different applications and so forth. He got into so many different things. But the reason I mention him here, in the context of projects, he made a bold decision and says, if you're not working projects, I don't know why you're part of the team. Can you imagine the CEO of an organization says, if you're not working projects, you're not part of the team? I mean, he didn't say you're going to lose your job. He says, we are all about creating change. Yeah? So he did that, and he really adhered to that. He changed titles. He defined them based on what they do. And of course, if we look at our organizations, I would love to see more and more organizations realizing, Antonio, our friend, remember he used to say what? Run the business, change the business. Even in PMI on the board, when he was a chair, we were focused so much on making sure we're balancing our time, and that over time, we're shifting, running the business, instead of taking 80% of our time, to shift down to the 20. Changing the business goes up to 80. Why is that so important? Because we have to grow, scale. Yeah, and he did a very good job, in my opinion. And leaders, the reason I'm passionate about interacting with him, we talked about passion early on. When you sit with the man on a panel like I did, for example, talking about, at the time I believe it was called Cities of the Future, if I'm not mistaken, you can tell from the passion of the person how much he really believes in the importance of projects being a vehicle for growing organization. Okay, so let's get serious about another activity. Now get your phones out, please, and do the scan here. And let's see what the room believes before we get really warmed up and started with the first one about what's going to happen in the future. You know, if we start really getting into the future, what's going to happen to our friend, the project manager? Go ahead, Ricardo. Yeah. At least I can tell them, yeah. So I have to scan it too, huh?
No.
Okay. Google. Mm-hmm. We'll give you a couple more seconds. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oops. Ricardo was showing me on the fly to use the technology because he uses Mentimeter and I don't. So I have 61 votes so far. And I'm not going to be able to show probably the slides on the screen because we didn't connect the phone to that, but I'll share with you the results as well. What do you think? What do you think the room said, by the way? Let's do a delta between what the room shows and what the results actually are. Oops, that was right here. Say again? It's so small. Oh, you have an option to get it. Okay, so do you want to read what you got? Because I'm having a hard time reading it here. So I'm here. Oh no, it looks like I can read it. So the majority of the room picked business strategist, yeah, which really is like it's such a beautiful thing for my heart and Ricardo's as well, because that's where we see the change going in that direction. You remember when he mentioned you missed the boat when it comes to what the business outcomes are, right? So the future requires us to be what? Very much in line with being truly a business strategist. You are the execution of a strategy. You are that vehicle for executing strategy. The second closest with the coach, which is also good. Why do you think that's, Ricardo?
I agree completely. And one thing, please, there is no right or wrong answer.
Yep.
Okay, maybe we can come back in 20 years and then I will say the right answer. But right now, thinking about the future, I think it can be all of them. But what we can see, it's becoming much broader than what used to be. So the coach element is critical for you to drive innovation, but also strategy to understand what is the best path you can take to get to the result.
Yeah.
And it's not just tactical in operation. You need to think at a higher level.
You know what I find also very interesting, Ricardo, is the definition of those elements is changing too.
Yep.
A coach a year ago is going to be very different than the coach's role a year from now or 10 years from now. Yeah? Because you coach differently because the nature of engaging is differently. The generation is different, right? The needs of the business and the environment are changing as we sit here, even in the event. Yeah. So the message here is really about let's always question and revisit. You know, again, I'll go back to Laura. She was in the same event I was in the University of Maryland a couple of weeks back, and she had the most fun debate. If you haven't listened to that, go to her podcast. The debate was about process versus principles. Is project management process or is it principles? You think who won, you think? Which group won? Principles, right? Because processes, templates, any classic set anything, right, has to serve what? Purpose. And purpose cascades into what? The principles that are going to be very important. And that's why we have to be super fluid, in my opinion, in how these things will go into the future. Yeah? All right, so it's time to really, I'm so excited about this because if we don't even cover the rest, this is so important because of that whole notion of the people side. Ricardo.
Yeah. This, I will take a lead here. I was very fortunate because during my professional life, I have the chance to experiment project management in different things. And I don't know if you know, but between 2012 and 2017, I was the global director for infrastructure and project management at the United Nations. So I was responsible for pretty much all infrastructure, all logistic, and all project management at the United Nations. So from humanitarian response to crisis, to war, to all these challenges, I was responsible in creating that. And what I want to share with you, it was one of the best experiences. And why I want to tell you this, because most of the time, we measure benefit and success in terms of money, resources, profit, etc. But when you are on the humanitarian front, like COVID, right, or like Ebola crisis that we had in Western Africa, we are not talking about, what is the ROI. It's different. But we use the same approach that we do. We need to manage stakeholders.
Yeah.
We need to have an innovation culture. We need to think out of the box to sort things out. And this is why, for me, for example, project management is so magical, because you are able to apply this in different topics. And I want just to give you an example. If you go to the next slide, for me, it's the Unbev.
And please don't take that against us, right? They do have alcoholic drinks and things like that.
Yeah,
but they do a lot more beyond.
But they do beverage, okay?
Yeah.
All sorts, from water to alcoholic beverage, but they do all sorts. But I don't want to talk about that. I just want to talk about COVID. Ambev is a massive organization. I'm Brazilian, and it was in Brazil. And do you remember, because everyone remember, what happened with alcohol to clean our hands at the beginning of COVID? This was the most scarce product, people fighting to get one bottle of that. You remember that. So what they did, they took a very, I would say, traditional manufacturing model, and they used that manufacturing model. And they said, look, we need to do something as a society, as part of our commitment to the society. And they created what is called, they call the Squad for Good. They took a group of volunteers to rethink what we can do to use our strength to help to fight COVID on what we know how to do. This is the process and this. And one thing they did, they started a production of alcohol in gel to deliver using the same production. But what was the real magic they did? They took all their logistic chain right? Because if you sell like Coca-Cola, do you know Coca-Cola is the largest logistic complex on earth? Because you go in any place on the planet, there is a Coke there. And someone brought the bottle, brought the can. So they use the same trucks, the same process, the same packaging, the same driver, the same distribution chain to reach and adapt to that. And this was one of the most magic cases I have seen of use of project management, using an innovation culture to apply, restructuring their factory, their logistic, and everything to deliver the results they were expecting. So this was something pretty much unbelievable. There is a video on my channel with Zeitoun. No, you were not there. Oh, you were there.
I think I was there. Yeah.
Okay.
We met.
We interviewing them to talk about that. To understand. So they created from scratch let me give you a number. In 3 weeks, from zero to become the largest distributor of alcohol for the hands, in 3 weeks. Just to see how the power of doing and shaping this for the good.
Yeah, and Ricardo, I mean, he's Brazilian and it's a Brazilian company, and I'm sure he can talk about that forever because of his passion, which I love. But to me, as a, let's call it outsider to that case, so not only did they do what he just said, they continued to reinvent themselves. They found Brazil is needing oxygen tanks. They had the ability to do that. They found Brazil needing hospitals. They used their massive expertise in construction management to build hospitals in record times. The message here is what? 2 things. Authorization around mission, and second, make sure that we have a very dynamic, fluid process and principles, basically, that drive us to move to where we're needed the most, in this case, serving the country. Extremely beautiful. That squad of good, 6 people, I believe, Ricardo, right? 6 people, they were fully authorized by the executive team to really, make the calls timely. No bureaucracy, no lines of demarcation, no silos, any of the things we know about in project management, break.
Yeah, and do you remember one example? She said we had a piece of equipment that was delivered to a wrong site. Someone took a car, drove there, put the equipment in the trunk of his own car, and drove to the other place. Because he said, if I ask for everything, find the transportation, it will lose 3-4 days on that. And they lost something like 3 hours.
They actually live the principles of what we have always preached. 20 years ago in my career, early jobs and projects and so forth, somebody tells me, Al, or Ala actually, never ask for forgiveness. Never ask for, what is it? No, which one? For permission. Ask for forgiveness, which is fatal sometimes, right? You think about it, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. But if you're doing the right mission and focusing on the right outputs, why would you worry, right? Yeah. So I think that team was a great example of that. Yeah. So we want to get you into exercise, very important, right? So you're going to see those 6 points here we're showing on the slide 3 times, probably depends on the time, right? And these questions here, we've all been to events before. We've heard, other speakers talk about this. The quality of your questions determine your future. Do you agree with that statement? As a project manager specifically, if you don't ask the right questions timely, well, guess what? You've missed the boat. Yeah? And I've had it so many times. Till today, I make that mistake. Till today. Right? I was sharing with Ricardo some of my challenges. I'm in the downstream side of digital innovations within my company, right? So I'm in charge of the master plan and the whole, what's called NPI, new product introductions and the gates and stuff. Well, guess what? That's downstream. Upstream is what? Strategy, proper choices, da-da-da. Did I push back and ask the right questions? Did I push back and say, management team, get your act together? Not enough. Yeah? So you continue to learn. Well, I want you to focus on the first 2. What we want you to do is only 5 minutes. Whether you do it in the same format, you don't have to stand necessarily, but in small, quick teams. The first one talks about projects managed in the future as a vehicle for creating experience-driven culture. What is that, by the way? What's an experience-driven culture? Let's make sure we have a joint definition. What do you think that is in the future?
Documentation of lessons learned.
Well, I mean, that can help you, but when you hear experience, we live in the digital age right now. When you hear experience, what are you thinking of? What's that? Yeah, but let's not always go to the failures. Hopefully, experience means I'm having a good time interacting with something. Like in a hotel, what's your experience? Is the service, the quality, the cleanliness, right? And in a project, we always think about the experience of the customer or the stakeholders externally, but what about our experience with the organization and how we work and how our teams work and how the communication flows in the organization, right? So this is what we mean by experience-driven culture, is that it's about the entire ecosystem of how you experience your work and the results of your work.
I want just to add one point on this. Remember Ambev? This COVID experience was so fantastic for them, for the teams, for the organization, that they said, now we want to apply the same concept, but not for alcohol gel, but to do other things. Why we don't use this experience? Because this increase motivation, etc. So this is exactly what we want to hear from you. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And to be frank, one of the learnings I'm going through right now, and I highly recommend it. It's kind of like too much if you're not into. We all know emotional intelligence, right? This is called actually positive intelligence, PQ. Yeah, check it out. There's an app for it. The app is free. If you wanna, I'm not selling anything. I'm actually paying for a course I'm taking there. But it's really about exactly finding ways by which you really are anchored in that particular present moment of creating the right mindset, the right views, the right experience for your team, for yourself, for the others as well, because there are so many things that sabotage our ability to really excel in how we deliver our projects. Yeah, so keep that in mind. That's too much definition of this because maybe it's a new term. And then situational leadership. Service-centered leadership is the key word here, right? So we've heard of the servant leadership model, etc. At the end of the day, all of us exist in the realm of projects and programs to provide that service, right? So keep that in mind. Just have a very brief discussion. Look at your organization. Give us what's called pockets of excellence. I would love to hear 1 or 2 comments at the end of this 5 minutes, right? Give us what's called pockets of excellence, POEs, right? What are the pockets of excellence in where you are, the customers you interact with, colleagues, whatever the case might be, that indicate, oh, this is such a great attraction from an experience standpoint as a culture, or there's something unique about that leadership model. Make sense? Yeah?
Perfect. No more than 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
So please either stand or work in small, groups, etc. Same people. Or if you don't like who we talked to at the beginning, go somewhere else in the room.
Now it's 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Sorry. Al, stop. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. The first 2 only. Yep. Yeah.
The first 2 questions. It's just we have 33 minutes.
Okay.
It can be 2, 3, okay, small groups. One. 2 minutes.
We'll probably have this one more time, not two. Probably.
Time is over. Please, let's sit.
It was not. So, but life is tough. Speaking of time,
This was supposed to be something like 2 days.
yeah, exactly.
We're doing 2 days in 1 hour 15 minutes. So
by show of hands, by show of hands, who has enough time to get things done? By show of hands, who has enough time to get things done? Look at the room, right? So time has become much more of a commodity. Unfortunately, that's something, not a commodity, that's probably not the right word, but something that's very hard for us to manage. Time management, remember when I first learned project management, I was in the university. I finished my undergrad in Egypt, in Cairo, in Ain Shams University. A great professor, Abdelhadi Hosni, Allah yarhamu yani, and he taught me construction management. I remember the Gantt charts for the first time and so forth, right? And so many aspects of time management. Over the years, though, there's something called Parkinson's law, okay? That's not the disease, that's the law that says what? Things expand to fill up the time you give to them. You give it an hour, you're going to take an hour. You're going to argue back, yeah, but something might really need to take an hour. That's true. But just make sure as best you can that you improve your estimating, and Ricardo is going to talk about digitization and some of the aspects that can improve that as well. We need to do a better job. That's what I like about Agile the most. I could care less about the rest of Agile, but I love time boxing. The concept, as simple as it is, right? Time boxing is like a lifesaver. You should see this guy. He wrote 3 chapters of this book. This does not affect the quality of the writing, believe me. Literally in like 10 days. This guy is a powerhouse, right? But he's genius in time boxing. He has so many other competing priorities and things he does, so he excelled in that. If we can all just improve that as an outcome of being here and listening to the different events and so forth, it's phenomenal. Right? Time is amazing. One comment on this, please, so we can go to the next pillar. Anyone saw pockets of excellence in your organization? I'm hoping, yes. Okay. Resilient leaders. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
It means adaptable. They adapt and they preach what they,
practice what they preach, yeah?
What they preach.
Sure.
Especially in times of disruption or
Yeah.
in times of the
Yeah,
norm.
that's a great point. The resiliency in the future, if we believe it's important today, imagine in the future. The rate of disruption, we're not going to be talking disruption anymore. Disruption is a passé in a way, as they say, right? We better stop saying, markets, disruptions, we'll stock. None of that is going to be better. It's going to get worse before any time it gets better. But what we could do to make it better is what? Is our ability to interact with that, our agility, our resiliency. Yeah, that's going to be the dominant factor in the leaders in the future. Very good.
I want just to add one point. Perfect. Absolutely. I cannot
Great one,
agree
yeah.
more. What I tell, for example, my 2 daughters every single day is that the most critical skills that we need to have in the current times is adaptability and resilience. It's principle number 11, if I'm not wrong, of the new PMBOK, because adaptability, because it's to be flexible, to adapt to a changing environment where you don't know exactly how it will be, but you need just to
Very much so.
be ready to.
One last example, pocket of excellence. Absolutely, absolutely. We're not going to give it a chance to do the exercise on sensing and responding, which is down there, by the way, and that's built almost one-to-one on empathy. Yep. What does sensing and responding mean? Trying to truly empathize, and by the way, another person. I love the woman. I cannot say that in front of my wife, right? But I love that person called Brené Brown, Dr. Brené Brown, right? Check her work. Dr. Brené Brown is the top when it comes to empathy. And even just in the break here in the event, just Google quickly empathy versus sympathy. We're not talking sympathy. You can be sympathetic to colleagues and friends and family as much as you want. Empathy is an art. It's a science. It's enabled by technology, as Ricardo will tell you as well, right? So great point. Let's get on, because otherwise we're not going to go where we need to go, which is really now we want to talk about the innovative cultures. You're going to hear me again tomorrow if you are in the sessions, and I'm part of a panel that's talking about, is it culture or is it digital? That success of transformation. To me, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Doctor what? Is he a doctor? Peter Drucker? Probably is, huh? So culture does eat strategy for breakfast. You can do the best you can in strategy. You can do the best you can in principles implementation and laying out the foundation of the processes. If we do not stop talking about culture as a subjective, nebulous thing, we are in trouble. Just like you heard the words about resiliency, etc. How do you create that? It's not just the person. It's the culture of the organization. Yeah. So 3M you can Google. I'm not going to talk about 3M a lot, but you know 3M, the company that has that Scotch tape and everything else, right? But if you really dig into that company and some of the things they share with us, they applied the same principles to dig into many different other innovations that made this company as successful as it is. What is very important, I'm not going to talk about it a lot, because what I care about the most is they have created the time for every employee in the organization to focus on innovation. Let me go back to that point again. Time to innovate. Block. How many of us in Outlook, and I started finally doing it as much as I can, put times on your calendar for think time, for innovation time. If you don't do that, please do. Another person I recommend, John Maxwell. I learned a ton from John Maxwell, right? For leadership, there is no person on earth, in my personal opinion, as good as John Maxwell when it comes to some of the principles of leadership. Yeah? He marks his calendar. He cascades his strategy into years, months, weeks, days. He's literal in that. And he reviews every day in terms of its relevance to movement on that strategy. Yeah? Marking the calendar. Very simple principle. Look at where you spend your time. Do the exercise over the course of 2 weeks and look at your Outlook, etc. What these guys did in 3M, they almost would penalize you if you don't dedicate time to really what? Innovate. And they love for you to have that time, and that time where a lot of the ideas that company actually has managed to get into the world. Yeah? So let's do one more thing before we proceed. Let's do your phones again, because we want to get your sense. Which culture do you have in your organization as well?
Maybe it's good that you spend 1 second here explaining the four
absolutely.
terms.
Sorry, thank you.
For those who...
Not only, it's a good point what he says, Ricardo, because some of them overlap in a way. Mm-hmm. You know, fear-infested, blame-dominated, you may see it in your organization, both of them. But pick the one that comes to mind first. Blame-dominated means when things go wrong, the first thing people look around and say, oh, she didn't do this. Oh, I did not get this. It's a classic culture dilemma. Yeah? Fear-infested means you cannot speak up, especially when it matters. It's all about timing. Projects are all about timing, right? All about timing. Don't come at the end and tell me, oh, but I knew that this is going to happen. When that happens, there's no ownership in that culture, right? So that's very important. Transformative, we know. That's the agility and the need for change. Risk-averse is a dominant one when it comes to, you don't even hear the dialogues on risk. You go to meetings, nobody talks about risk. Nobody likes the word. I'm خليك متفائل أو شيء. تمام? This is really, staying just optimistic is not. I love the fact that we have to have hope. Hope is very important. But there's also the other side of that. Hope is not a strategy. Yeah? We have to be very careful. We have to maintain our hope, but we have to cascade that. And that's what risk does. All right. I think part of the challenge is maybe I influence your answers. So let's see what the answers are first. And what do you think? Which one? Any guesses which one was the top before you look at the answers? Yeah, okay.
of what is the results.
All right. What do you think it is, Ricardo?
No, I think it will be A, but I'm not sure if it's the true answer.
Yeah. So the majority said A. The second closest actually was a little bit the blame dominated, but the closest to that is fear infested. But the two you can combine. A culture that has fear infested and blame dominated usually go pretty much hand in hand. Yeah. So no surprise. And then risk averse was the smallest one actually, which to me is great that it's the smallest one. That means what? Many of our organizations and government agencies and others in the room, we're starting to what? To have a higher appetite for risk. We want to take risk. 2030 and the initiatives that we have underneath that umbrella, they are extremely progressive, right? They extremely have aspirations that are very hard for us to drive towards. So we have to really raise that appetite. Are you surprised by this? Yeah? Who's lucky in the transformative side? Give me, by show of hand, yes, some of us, yeah? Why do you believe it's transformative in your organization?
Well, it depends on the mission of the company.
Yeah.
You can see that the project is succeeding very fast. So we can see the type of culture that we are pursuing.
Very good. Yeah.
The atmosphere that we are living
The atmosphere we're living in.
Yeah, I want to.
Yeah.
I was just waiting for you to finish
Go ahead.
because this was exactly what I want to say.
Yeah.
For example, a perfect example, probably even better than 3M, is what is happening
In
here
Saudi Arabia, yeah.
in Saudi Arabia. And I came here. I can tell from my own experience. I came here the first time. I think that 2017 or something around that, and just the experience at the airport.
Oh my God.
You know, now it takes you 30 seconds to go. The visa is online. You apply. You receive the answer in 5 minutes and done. And you see how the country is changing. And of course, probably when you are inside, it's not very easy. But when you leave and come back, you say, well, what is happening? When we talk about Vision 2030, this is tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this is tomorrow. We'll blink.
And you know what I love?
And then it's over. You know, it's done.
What I love
And
about your example, by the way, you just hit two. You hit the strategy of the,
Yeah.
of the kingdom, translated into a different culture. You didn't say what I liked the most about coming into the airport yesterday, which is the people.
Yeah.
The people are doing their job with a huge smile
Yeah.
and welcoming, not like, oh, here's another person, or no. Everything is completely
It's
altered.
a cultural
Yeah.
transformation.
Yeah.
It's a massive cultural transformation that is facing here. For
good.
example, someone told me about the health card or something like that, that it's now all digital and this. So, you know, and this happened in some like, you know, in a blink.
So tell us about digital.
Yeah.
What's going on?
And
Is my job done because of AI? Tell me.
Yeah. But look, of course, tomorrow my session at the opening will be exactly about that. So I will not spend too much time because I hope you watch the other one. But what is happening is that usually digital was on the periphery of companies, organizations, governments, and then it came inside. And it's now not inside, it's at the very center. So what we see today on the digital is that we are folding the time because of technology. So we are able, to decide better, to have better data, to have better information because we have a lot of information. For example, what is AI? I will tell about this tomorrow, but what is this generative pre-trained transformer or GPT? It's nothing more than a process that read mathematically trillions, I'm saying trillions of documents, and they use probabilistic model to infer what the next word will be, or what the next pixel on a picture will be, what is the next movement will be, to predict something, to generate based on previous information. So in order to do that, why these became so powerful now? Because today, it's very easy to create this repository, because you know how it used to be in the past? The repository was here. Right? And you retire and you say, oh, now the knowledge went away. Right? Went away. But today, We have a massive amount of information that can help us to have ideas, to use today technology to generate ideas. Go on ChatGPT tomorrow and say, I want to open an ice cream business. Can you propose for me 20 possible names for me of companies? And you press enter, and it takes you 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So this benchmark study, who is doing that? Metrics, KPIs. So you can measure things in a much more effective way.
You know, on the idea one, and that's one of my favorite, closest to my heart. So I don't know if others in the event are like us, but we as part of being too much or too long around project management, he's a fellow in PMI and I'm a fellow. And when I became a fellow, PMI gives you the option to have business cards from PMI. So they said, what title should we give you? They looked at what I've been doing over the years. They gave me Idea Ambassador. So my title, actually, and I have the card with me. I can show it to you. I'm not lying to you or anything. And if you think about it, that's what I see. The only thing I didn't hear you say, though, is the time. Remember, our success in the future is all about how time is really put to the most influential change we can create. The reason I love AI is time. I'm not going to be threatened 2 seconds by AI if AI is helping me what? Get to what Ricardo just talked about in terms of the knowledge, the ideas, the benchmarks, everything else, so I can do what? So I can think. That's the word. Think again for a change. AI should make us very much smarter, right? Not the other way around. We created that monster. We better use that monster well and really do what we can to what? To change ourselves. Okay.
Look, I agree 80%. Okay. But I still have 20% of doubts, okay? Because I am at the heart of what is happening in the AI today. And I'm extremely excited, happy, and scared.
Yeah.
All at the same time. Because what I see today is it's too good to be true. So we need to see how futures will evolve. But there is one thing.
Yeah.
If I can read the future for you today, and I will be very polemic today, I think that pretty much 80% of the activities project managers are doing today in terms of preparing reports, rescheduling things, and this will just disappear. Will be done by machine. And you will not even remember that it was done. It's automatic. You know.
So two things there. Two things there. Please note what he just said. To me, the outcomes are two things. A, all of us just got a job promotion. Why? Because we'll all have project assistants. Number one. This is your new secretary, EA, whatever you want to call it, right? Two, it does what? Now I lost my thought. There was something else in my thought about more than time. Go back, rewind your tape. What did you just say at the end?
Availability.
Say again? Oh, yeah, maybe that. I'll come to it. But just the project assistant component, right, by itself is huge. It's going to come.
But okay.
But all of that is because he said he doesn't agree with the portion.
No, but I
what is that called? Blame.
But what I see is that this is taking the center. So most of the organizations are embracing this. And my biggest challenge, I want to say, and I want you to write, maybe AI is the biggest threat ever to any project management model, from the PMBOK to Agile.
Yeah.
And why? Because there is a possibility that this will become irrelevant anyway, the approach. Because the AI mechanism will do what it's needed. Oh, if it's a bunch of document that you want, okay, press enter and wait 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, if it's not, press enter and wait 2 seconds.
Isn't it great when somebody talks, the thought comes to your mind again? So the thought is you become truly an impact driver. I really love that statement from Laura, right? So by freeing the time to think again, by really having those administrative things go away, you become much more intelligent. You spend your time on much more intelligent things, and you become a true difference maker in your organization.
And I want to give you my own example. I use AI hundreds of times every single day. Not ChatGPT only, but also Chat. And I use, and it saves me a lot of
Yeah.
time. But I'm saying truly a lot. But what I want to teach you, all this digitization. First, the first 5% we need to do.
Yep.
And the last 20% we need to do too. It's not just, oh, you do that, copy
Yeah.
and paste.
Yeah.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
So you need to analyze. This is what I'm saving is
What-
this heavy lift. For example,
it's a
I
great-
used to
yeah.
create WBS.
Yeah.
And I create the first draft of the WBS. Then I take a look
Yeah.
and go deeper. For example,
Yeah, no, I was just saying it's really it's really interesting how if you dedicate AI to a good use, right? The not only the traditional things that you're using, but the things we've been dreaming about come to fruition. The whole trends, and we keep saying, oh, trends, and applying business analytics and all that's going to do it. Of course, it does. But if you really expand it to the multitude of data points across all organizations, across times, your trends and understanding of where things might be trending and heading becomes massively different, right? So we want to make sure that, please, yes, he's right. There is a threat. But we could also, almost from a risk adjustment course, we could really do something different about where it's taking us because we're asking of it something very different than maybe even what was intended. But you're right. I mean, you've heard the CEOs and others come on TV and CNN and other channels and even talk to governments about the threats. I think this is something where we all need to play a role, right? So something really for us to
and this will be
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
center. There is no way
Yeah.
you can say, I will be out of that, because
Yeah.
there's no way. Okay?
We're not going to spend so much on ServiceNow, but
Yeah.
this is the only reason we're passionate about their examples in the book is the following. The leadership of ServiceNow. Bill McDermott is the CEO of ServiceNow. He was in the region multiple number of times at the time when you call it SAP or SAP, right? He was the CEO of SAP worldwide. And a great example of leadership to take an organization like this. ServiceNow is focusing on workflow, automation of workflow, and really inventing completely anything when it comes to that. But the way they do I'm not going to even talk about what the points here from the learning from them. I want to talk to you even about out of all the companies we engaged with. You remember we have 50 plus companies who contributed to the book. This guy, when I reached out to him, he not only said yes willingly he wanted to be, and also wanted to to really be right at the forefront in multiple number of chapters. He dedicated an entire team, the only company out of all companies, dedicated an entire team with a dedicated leader and pockets of excellence across the organizations, from the PMO to engineering to R&D, and all of them had to come together with me to understand the concept behind the book. What are all these 10 pillars, the meanings behind them? This is a great example from a project standpoint. Every other company, we'll get to you and and we chase and all of that. They were chasing me. They were saying, when is the manuscript going to be ready after they submit everything? When is this and that? And that's all coming from what? A culture and a dedication of a leader, and ultimately people and processes that are supporting what we need to be doing in the future to be as effective, as impactful as we want to achieve. All right, so way of working, I think we covered most of that, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but please look at the right-hand side of this slide. Ricardo said it beautifully at the beginning about the changing constraints. No longer we have even the 3 or the PMI that has 6 and so on. It's going to be also continuously what? Fluid and dynamic. It's going to literally, it's called the future constraints are going to be based on frameworks around what success looks like. What does success mean? The number one thing when you walk into a project, if you forget everything from today's session, is please to ask the question, what does success look like around here? If you hear 5 different views, I still remember in my first days I was working in ENIC. ENIC is the Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation for a few years. I was running their APMO for a while. I walked around the organization. I was asking both the Emiratis and the expats and others, well, what is our strategy? What are our strategic objectives? Once I started getting 5 or 6 answers in the same day that are all different, what does that tell me? We're not aligned. We had to simplify the objectives. We had to simplify the metrics behind them, the dashboards where the executive team looks at as a board, etc. You have to, and use technology at the center of that. So it is so important in the future is that these are going to be super dynamic. They're going to have to be dependent. If you were on Ross's session earlier and one of the answer it depends and so on, and if you took the PMP and you know the answer it depends is very common, it's much more so in the future. It's on steroids, right? The amount of flexibility that are going to be required. I need to nail it though when I tackle that. So I'm not going to spend so much time on what's changing between traditional and this, but you notice that requirements will have a much higher degree of volatility. Do you sit back and say, oh, this is so much, I cannot really deal with that, my success chances are lower, etc.? Absolutely not. Do the opposite. Take it on, right? You heard resiliency, you heard adaptability. I would highly recommend that if I'm value-driven, nothing will faze me. Value-driven is going to be one of the most important things we need to do. We have got to nail that, and we also need to make sure not only that we have the high tolerance, but we keep our true customers at the center of this as well. I think there's one more if you want to take a picture, but it's the high risk attitude. If you're not talking about risk, if not every single meeting you're going to, even your team meetings or any other meetings you're attending, if nobody's mentioning the word risk, you know we have what I call it a denial culture. This is denial management, not project management, literally, right? Because risk should be like so much encouraged in our hearts. That's the only reason I love project management, by the way. I was not convinced ever of PMI or any of that unless risk management was what? Central to the core of that, yeah? And finally, a couple of things we want to address. We're not going to do another exercise, so we're going to skip that. But we wanted to talk about governance a little bit. Who likes the word governance? Okay. Some don't like it. Why is that?
They like chaos.
They like chaos. What else? They like freedom, very much, yeah? No responsibility, escaping that. Hiding facts. Yeah.
That you love.
Please.
I actually like governance, all right? But I've been in meetings with governance, and pardon my Arabic, but
Yeah.
I think you will love this in governance. Whenever I talk to
Yeah.
decision makers
Yeah.
about governance,
Yeah.
in qannantu, qayyadtu.
I got it.
So every time we try
Yeah.
to document
Yeah.
governance,
Yeah.
and especially what Ross said,
Yeah.
accountability.
Yeah.
no, qayyadtu. No,
Yeah.
Sorry. No.
Yeah. See, I don't know if that's going to go against what Ross said, because I was in the Ross's thing, but I was also multitasking a couple of times. I do not, personally, and please don't take me, so much on that. I do not really believe we need either understand the word accountability right or really implement it right. So I ended up not liking the word accountability at all. I would very much love to use the word ownership. Remember when we talked about passion? Remember when we talked about changing ways of working, right? And remember when we talked about truly the impact of many of those influencers in the future and making sure that when we go to do our work, that we really meaningfully love what we do and take that further? That's ownership. You don't need, yes, in our culture it's harder, right? In the Middle East in general, and I grew up in Egypt and I was just in Egypt visiting as well. We still have tons of problems when it comes to really auditing and making sure Nas Adha Damir will do what they're supposed to do, etc. But the reality is, we've got to, even if you have the tightest governance, unless the individual truly believes in what he or she is doing and actually implements against that because he believes in the impact that this is going to create, you're not creating the human being that you want to create. And that's where the beauty is. AI, used well, gives us a chance to be humans again, think again, right? And that allows us to really, when we come to governance, and I'm going to show you a very small part of the clip of Simon just to remember that guy. What he's doing here in this one, he's questioning what success looks like. If you get nothing again out of the key points, out of our takeaways here, please get out of this session shortly here saying, I'm going to question my view of success every single chance I'm having to be in that position. And that doesn't make you a bad person or like an annoying person. That makes you a responsible person, a person who owns really what he or she wants to do.
The metrics that we have
Sound?
are not wrong.
Uh-oh.
They're just incomplete, right? The standard metrics that we have to measure our own success in our companies, profits and revenues, EBITDA, whatever you want to use, and the standard metrics we use to measure our own wealth, there's nothing wrong with those, they're just incomplete. That's like saying, when I chose to marry her, she's really good looking. Important. And, is she a good person? Does she bring the best out in me? How is she in times of stress? Like, will she look after me? Will I look after her? Will she let me help her? In other words, there's more to it, and it's the same for businesses. So what What I'm learning to do is to understand those balancing metrics. So I'm now very interested in things like momentum, right? Where I want to measure momentum as much as I want to measure accomplishment or sheer numbers. So, for example, the traditional way in which we measure, this is really funny. This is an inside joke you won't get. Can I have that pad, if you still have it back there, please? Or not, never mind. The traditional, there was a whole debate before, I don't need the pad, and they said, well, keep it here in case you need it. I'm like, no, I don't need it. No, I need it.
This is an example of adaptability on the fly. Actually,
Anyway,
take that
I'll just do a visual thing. So the way we traditionally measure success is we give someone a goal, right? We say, meet this financial goal, and then what we do is, you're the best. So here's what we do. We give somebody a financial goal, we say, hit that goal, right? And what we do is we don't know how they got there, right? They beg, borrow, and steal. The morale on their team is, if they're doing well, it's high. When they're doing badly, it's really low. They can't hold on to employees or team members. They keep quitting or getting fired. And it's kind of a mad dash. And then on the right day, on the right time, they hit the goal, and we give that person a bonus. There's another person who's building a team. Morale is really good all the time, whether it's good times or bad. Performance is not crazy highs or lows. It's just the steady growth. The team gets along great, and at the end of the financial year, that's where they end up and they miss their goal. We don't give that person a bonus. And so what I'm starting to pay attention to is momentum, right? And how we got somewhere. Clearly this person's going to hit their goal in 16 months or 17 months. But to the rest of the organization, we told them, don't do this. We told the rest of the organization, do this. So what ends up happening is we're incentivizing behavior that's actually bad for the organization and bad for the team, because we make this the end-all be-all. So what I'm considering is not just were they able to hit the goal, but how's the momentum? And in reality, I want not to give this person a bonus, and I want to give this person a bonus.
So I'm going to move from that, but you check it out. You can find it. Momentum, very important. What success looks like for the organization. How much the wrong behaviors can destroy the culture, can destroy really how that cascades into the employees and to the project teams, right? We have to own that. We have to own that. And we have to question that. We have to respect our leaders. We're not questioning for the sake of questioning. We have to be very respectful, but we have to make sure that we have the right avenues and the times for us to have those talks. There's not a leader I know, an executive I know, who will say, I don't want to hear anything that will make me more successful. All of them want to be more successful. All of them want to have more time. All of them want to have longer weekends or completely open weekends, right? So let's make sure we hit that. Finally, a couple of things so we can maybe get a question or two. This equation is very important. Why is it important? Because I just made it up. It's not that important, but it's really 4 elements that, for me, first of all, because I worked in the nuclear for a while, and these initials were really important for us. S for sure in nuclear was safety, was not this, right? But I believe we need to make sure we nail this whole sensing ability. If you don't use AI to make you better sense and respond, I don't know why we even consider AI, right? Because what sense and respond means what? You are really able to read between the tea leaves and so on. You're looking exactly at those nuances and so forth, and you are very fast on your feedback to the adaptability to respond. Intentionality. Please, project leaders, now and into the future, for the next 10 years, the most successful are going to be very intentional. Intentional means what? Very focused on purpose, the real outcome of success, etc. Thoughtfulness. This is where we can get that time again to be thinking again for a change. And finally, it's our energy. Can you fake being a leader? Can you fake being really happy about something? You can maybe fake it for about half an hour. People will see right through you, right? Ricardo and I hope you at least got out of this that we're not faking that we love this topic, right? It's really our DNA, right? And you got to make sure you internalize, of course, in the future. A couple of comments on what you've seen in organizations in their PMOs and metrics. Anything big has changed there?
Yeah, I think that technology, as I said, is bringing a lot of innovation on how do you measure success and how fast you are. One thing that I really see as a big trend is that results and metrics are not something like you measure once a month.
Yeah.
You are measuring on a second by second base. For example, I did a talk last week and where I said, you know, the balance sheet of companies that companies publish once a year, it will not be like that anymore. It will be something like, I want to see the balance sheet of Aramco. Now, at this second,
Yeah.
how is it?
Yeah.
Now, you know, and it will be fluid.
Yeah.
And the same for projects.
Yeah.
It means you will have the insight of the project, not in our status meeting report and this, or not even through a PMO, but you will receive this based on the need. I want to know, how is this metric now? And you will have it. I think
But we gotta change the way of
Yes.
working. We gotta change the way of working, right?
Yeah.
We can't have the best technologies. We can't have the best iPad on the construction site or whatever it is. And if I'm gonna hesitate, I see the data and I don't share it like that second, or I go to 3 other people to ask, should I let the boss know about this?
It's
Nothing
our
changed.
ability to
Yeah.
react quick
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we see something.
Very true. All right, so let's see. There's one summary slide, this one here. Again, this is important to us because this is what we called in our work the quote-unquote core to the innovation model and core to that experience culture to a great extent. Yeah, I think we addressed almost all the 7 elements there. I'm a big fan. The only one I didn't talk about is using projects as a lab, as a laboratory. I love the experimentation aspect of projects. Dr. Saadi was telling me earlier about some work he was doing with an organization here in the kingdom where they're actually truly experimenting different ways of delivery, using internal cases to completely quickly show what that could look like and changing the way of working in the organization. The experimenting mindset and how that gets implemented and changing how we operate not only changes outcomes, but makes things much more fun. When is the last time you worked on a project and had a lot of fun? Yeah? So if we can really get there, I'm all in. I'm all in, and that should help me tremendously. So, Ricardo, this is our contacts. We want to hear maybe a question or two. If you please reach out, if you have any questions, things you can help with. We want to learn from you, right? So if there's examples of pockets of excellence and things you did not get a chance to bring to the discussion today, please do so. Would love to hear from you as well on that. And let's see, I want to hear 1 or 2 volunteers' questions, or at least what stood with you the most. The worst thing I face when I attend events and so forth, or even master classes, is that, oh, come on, was this another one, and da-da-da, right? What is the 1 or 2 things? If you don't have a question, what is the one thing that really resonated with you that you're going to try to do differently? If you leave the room and don't do one thing differently, Ricardo and I, unfortunately, both have failed, or we had a different definition of success, right? We thought success is delivering on time, within the scope, da-da-da, and of course, that should have been challenged. So, comment or 2, go ahead. Who wants to go first? I know this is before eating some more and stuff, so we are holding you hostage for a second, but go ahead.
Okay, so if we want to talk about organizational excellence,
Yes.
and sometimes, you know, you have this innovative mind. Let's say you've been assigned as a head of PMO, but your leaders don't have the vision, rather than on how to automate, how to remove all this admin stuff from your way,
Yeah.
and to really make sure that all is in place. You know, how do you deal with those leaders, and how can you educate them and coach them?
This is the multi-billion real question on the table right now. Why is that? PMI, even from its existence, every one of us who love PMI, volunteer for PMI, etc., and that's why I don't like the changing and the mission statement of PMI, because I'm passionate about the older one. Worldwide, no, very detailed. Worldwide organizations will embrace, value, utilize project management, and attribute their success to it. One more time. Worldwide organizations will what? Embrace, value, and utilize project management and attribute their success to it. Who's going to do that? It's the executive teams. How many executives? I still maybe have 2 or 3 on a hand. The reason I joined ENIC, for example, is because the CEO of ENIC, محمد العباري, تمام؟ الحمادي اتلخبط الاثنين. حكيت عنه already. Yeah, he actually exemplifies project management principles. He only hired me because he really wanted someone to embed those principles. How do we get to that? To the question. Nothing will ever get to the executive suites of organizations unless you truly show impact. That's why we talked a lot about the future trends being what? Value driven. What is that? And showing them what? Success speaks for itself. Examples speak for themselves. don't ever show up to an executive for the rest of your time with your Gantt chart and report and any of that. Please promise me not to, right? Even if he asks you to do so or she does, right? Show it to her office and show her exactly in a statement or a diagram and talk through it about what does the impact look like when it comes to the future. Go ahead, Ricardo.
Yeah, I want just to give you a very brief answer. I think the best way to influence senior executives is through example and through results.
Yep.
So imagine when I joined the UN, I was the first employee of doing that. And it was the first time they did, and what you do, you don't show papers. You don't say, I'm doing it. No, it's show the results. Look, before, this was the challenge. Now, it's this. And then people say, this is good, this worked. And then they will give you more. For example, I started as one employee, and when I left in 2017, I had something like 1,200 employees on that.
That means they bought what? They bought the value, right?
And
what is his words, by the way? He's talking change management. He's not talking project management. He's talking as a state and a future state. That's what they really care about. They do not...
Even the way you dress, even the way you travel, these examples you start contaminating in a positive way and create the wave of change. For example, people used to wear tie and I said, look, I'm operations, and I remember once they questioned me my dress code because I was wearing polo, and then I said, are you hiring models or are you hiring? I said this.
He used to send me pictures. He used to send me pictures from the sites. These are very dangerous places around the world, right? So I saw not only how he dresses, but also the nature of a mission like that. The point Ricardo is sharing, which we talked about also even in the site model, please be very intentional about the impact you create by the work you do, right? That intentionality, as simple as that sounds, could make a massive difference. And the executives and others, it's not just about the executives. Strategy success, as we've always known from the beginning of time, top down, bottom up. The two have to meet somewhere. The bottom up has to be motivated and connected. The top down has to believe and see the value you're bringing. No PMO, none of that will succeed unless what? The top sees exactly how the dots are being connected to create that impact. We thank you for your time. Please continue to provide any questions or feedback in our contacts.
Tomorrow, the AI session, and tomorrow also the book signing somewhere at the booth. Sadi, do you know the time? No, right?
Not yet. Don't put him on the spot.
So you'll hear tomorrow, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
For being
Thank you. For sure. Enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ala. Thank you, Dr. Ricardo, for your dedication and passion. Your insights have inspired us. We are privileged to have you today and learn from you. Thank you very much.